There we go. All right, Churchill students, welcome. This is a career session centered on architecture, and we have two guest speakers today. I am not one of them. My name is Court Worth, and I am one of the counselors at Churchill. If your last name starts with P through Z and you are in 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, I'm your counselor, and I'm just here sort of representing Churchill and helping record and move this along. But we're very pleased to have two speakers from the career of architecture. We have John Webster and Bonnie Jean Dominguez, both joining us today, and I will hand it over to them so we can hear directly from them. Thank you both for being here.
Cool, thank you, Court, appreciate it. So hi, everybody that's watching. We are both working in the architectural world and wanted to share a little bit of where we came from and what architecture is and what it is to be an architect, and then follow up with how to become an architect and how that might apply to you. Perhaps you're interested in architecture, or you've known a little bit about it, or maybe you don't know anything about it, and maybe this little session can help to educate you on that. So my name is John Webster. I am AIA, which stands for American Institute of Architects. That means I'm part of a professional organization that represents licensed architects throughout the state. Actually, the AIA signifier is a national organization, but I am currently licensed as an architect in Oregon. I started out going from high school. I was interested in drafting and architecture from way back when. Back in my day, there was a show that was really popular that was called The Brady Bunch. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with that, but there was an architect that was the father in that show, and he brought architecture to be a somewhat popular thing. So that always piqued my interest. And I always liked building things like with Legos, and I was a big Lego fan, and building blocks of many different types. While I was in high school, that was a very small school in northern Nevada, and in that school there was a drafting program. So I got an opportunity to actually do some drawing that taught me some of the basics of architectural drawing in general, which was kind of really what catapulted me into doing this. That from there, I graduated high school and I went to a technical school to further my drafting abilities right after high school. And that was like 1 year technical program. I grew up in a place where I didn't think I would ever be able to go to architecture school and become an architect. It always seemed like a lofty dream that could never happen. I decided, well, I could still be involved in it and do drafting. So I did that, and I did a technical school for that. And I couldn't afford to go to any other school either. So that's the path that I took. After getting my drafting degree, which is a 1 year technical degree, I worked for a number of engineers and architects and contractors, just doing drawings on the side for them once in a while. And I decided, I wanted to go back to school and I wanted to put forth more of an effort. So I enrolled in the local community college in Nevada, and I took a whole bunch of classes, and those classes were like the preamble to the university degree. After I finished those 2 years at community college, I ended up transferring to the University of Oregon and graduated in 2005 from the University of Oregon, and most of my credits, because they were an architectural focus, transferred over to U of O, and I was successfully able to do that and graduated, and I've been working in the field since. So that's kind of how I kind of got along that path to get my education in architecture and get my start in that. Bonnie, do you want to share a little bit about like where you came from and how your path kind of came to where you are now?
Yes, I grew up in Springfield, and in school, during my K through 12, I would draw a lot of buildings. I really enjoyed that. My dad would take me to work sites, construction work sites, so buildings. I destroyed our fence between my house and our neighbor's house, and I made a fort out of it, and I got in trouble for that, but that's okay. But I learned a little bit about structures, and let's see here. So that's kind of like growing up just trying to invent things and make things. And like I ruined like irrigation. I ruined a what's it called, a hose, and I put a lot of holes in it so I can, like, you know, water the grass a different way. So I think if you like making things, it's definitely like something that you might want to consider, because you do build a lot of things. So let's see here. I went to Thurston High School, so that's probably one of your sport rivals. And I graduated. I went to Lane Community College. I studied 2 years of multimedia design. So that's Photoshop, Illustrator, animation stuff like the program Maya, and just a lot of kind of photography and things that lets you frame things, as John and I were talking about the other day. Just really gets you to see things from a different perspective, in like a more refined way. And then I did 2 years of engineering, also at Lane Community College. And actually, that was really great. I enjoyed that a lot. And I was going to do that. And I guess I'll tell you, that can be scary. But just do it. Like, I really wanted to do engineering. And I was going to go to OSU. And then I didn't because of the cost. And then I transferred to the University of Oregon with an Associate of Arts and Associative Science, because I got everything that you needed for those two. And so at the University of Oregon, I was gonna try to get into the architecture program. And by the way, okay, so there's the bachelor's program, and then there's the master's program. I highly recommend going into architecture at like the bachelor's if you can early on, because it's really expensive in the master's program. And I will tell you why I'm saying that. So so I tried to get into the architecture program. And they said that they don't take junior status students, because I already had like a ton of education. And that might have been, so don't quote me on this, but that might have been that the advisor was having a bad day or something, because I don't actually think that that was true. But anyway, I had to go get a bachelor's degree in something. My sister suggested public relations, which also, by the way, I highly recommend that field. That's a great field too. And public relations, by the way, is just writing a lot and social media, but also writing a lot, and it's and making sure that companies are very what's the word, socially conscious, like that they're making sure that they're trying to be good in the community. And anyway, so I went and did that, and I finished that, and then I went into the master's program, and that's when I did architecture, and that was really great. And but the thing is that I got into debt, and it's like a lot of money, but I'm fine. And I'm actually like, I don't feel like I'm drowning because the government's helping and whatever. And you can get that too. So don't worry about the debt. And I kind of wish that I would have studied engineering and then gotten the master's. And then I feel like I would have been, well, actually, you can also go John's path, because he knows pretty much everything that like an engineer is going to do anyway, kind of. So the whole idea of doing that for me, doing engineering, was that I wanted to be able to say, oh, engineer, you can't tell me that it can't be done, because I know it can be done. You just don't want to do the calculations. That was pretty much the only reason why I wanted to do that. So maybe it's not necessary. But anyway, so I got my master's, and then I started working here in town, and I worked at 2 firms, and it's been going great. So yeah, anything else? No, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the point is between Bonnie and I, we both have some similar aspects of what we went through in becoming an architect, and we have some differing things too. You know, we both took advantage of community college to start us out to save some money, because and I mean, I'm a big advocate of that. Community colleges are a valuable resource for people that can't afford to get into college right away. And for those who are lucky enough to be able to get into college right away, then if you're going to go into architecture, start early. You know, get involved in the architecture program early, because the degree program for an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's degree, is a 5-year program, not a 4-year program, a 5-year program. The benefit to that, though, also, well, the reason why they do that 5-year program is because there is so much that comprises what an architect is and what they do and what they need to know to be good at what they do, that it takes that 5 years to get all of that information. So and I'll talk about that in just a little bit too, when we get into some of the educational process. But the other benefit at U of O in particular is after that 5 years, you only have to do 1 extra year and you can get a master's degree if you have that 5-year degree. But you don't have to go down that path. You can do like what Bonnie had done. She went a path of getting a bachelor's degree in a totally different field and then transferring over into architecture. Because what was your bachelor again in Bonnie?
Public relations.
Public relations. And see, that is a really valuable skill that can be used in architecture, is public relations, as we'll discuss a little bit here too. There's also, many people go into business. Many people get a degree in art history, in environmental science. There's many different degrees that can then roll into an architecture master's program later, and all of those things really can connect a person and bring them together. All the experiences that I've had working for engineers, contractors, architects, doing things on my own, working for my family, designing things, all of those things are just more information that I've learned and built and built and built to comprise all of my knowledge. And I tap into that information on a regular basis. Just as I'm sure, Bonnie, your experience in all of those previous educational endeavors that you've been on all combine together to help you in architecture altogether as well.
Yeah, public relations, definitely. One of the things about public relations is that it helps you with the business side of things, and to some degree, depending on the program. But also, it really emphasizes the client and responsibility to the client and doing research. It really teaches you how to do research. And I find that I'm constantly thinking about the client and how I can expand the breadth of knowledge that I have very quickly in order to incorporate it into a project. So it's definitely been a really wonderful tool. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call.
So one thing I'd like to share is I'd like to share with you just some information. Here, this comes up now. So can you all see that all right? It says the basics, what is architecture, yes?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what is architecture, right? And this is saying that architecture is a field of study that is art, science, and practice of design in the built environment. And it's true that as we were just saying, all of these different components all combine together. Architecture is, yes, it's building a building, designing a building. You're not actually physically building it. You're not swinging the hammer. You're not the person that's doing all the calculations for the structure. You're not doing the calculations for all of the mechanical and electrical systems that are in the building. You're not necessarily doing all of that legwork for those projects, but what you're doing is you're coordinating all of that and you're acting as the lead for that. You are coming up with the grand vision and helping to create that grand vision and coordinating all these other players, all of these other people these colleagues that are working together as a team, and you're acting as the leader for them. That's really what an architect is doing more than anything. And our job is really to make sure that we are preparing our documents and everything like that so that we create buildings that are safe and functional for everybody.
And just another word that comes to mind is kind of like a mediator of relationships. So if you're any good at that, I remember my high school, we had like the mediator club where they would like mediate little issues that people had. So if you're into that, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. So in every state, as it says here, in every state, the title architect is protected by law. So that little AIA that you see after my name, that indicates that I am an architect. I am part of the American Institute of Architects. And by calling myself an architect, that's actually something that I have to legally obtain that title. And that it requires, the 3 E's, what they say. The first is education. And one of the most important things to know when seeking out an education and getting a degree in architecture is that you're attending a NAB accredited school. NAB is the National Association of Architectural Board, and they they determine whether or not a university is an accredited school for teaching architecture, because you have to have that accredited degree to be able to get that license. You also need to have the second E, so that's education. The second E is experience. And that experience happens while you're in school and after school. And you have to document that experience. So you have to, have experience with drawing drawings, with working with clients, writing contracts, doing construction administration, basically making sure that as they're building it, you're managing all of it to make sure that it's being built properly and according to code. Understanding code, building code is a big thing in our industry. Understanding all of these different various aspects of the architectural profession, that's that experience component. That's the second E. And then the third E is examination. That examination is what they call the ARE, the Architectural Registration Exams. Actually, Bonnie is in the process of doing that right now, correct? How many tests are you in with that now?
0.
Oh, okay. So she hasn't taken one yet. But altogether, I think that right now there are 5 tests that are required, or 6?
There are 6 tests.
Six tests.
3 of them are easy, and then the other 3 are just a little bit harder.
Right. So there are the multiple exams. When I took the exams, there were 7 at the time, and the process changes over time as things go on, and things have actually changed since the pandemic too. We're currently still in the COVID world right now, so the pandemic started allowing people to do testing at home, which has a pretty rigorous system. Otherwise, you have to go to a testing facility specifically to do these tests, and they're like 5-hour-long tests. So there's a little anxiety that gets brought in with that sometimes. But we can go in a little bit more about that in a bit too. But legally, we have to have a license to practice architecture, and that is a protected term, the term architect. That is something that you can't just call yourself. If you were to call yourself an architect without having that license, you can actually be fined for that and be charged for any wrongful, there's a whole slew of, legal issues that can come with that. So it's really important that's understood. And the reason why they do that is because that architect is specifically there to ensure the public safety and compliance with building codes. And if you don't have that education, experience, and proof of education and experience through examination, those 3 E's, if you don't have those, then there's no guarantee that you're going to be providing that service of creating a safe public space for anyone. So you may be designing really cool buildings, but you have to think about, well, is the building going to fall down on people? Is it environmentally comfortable to be in? Are we getting baked in the sun? Are we freezing in the winter? Are we making sure that we're taking advantage of natural light so that people can enjoy that natural light? Or are they in a dark cave feeling like they're a prison? Are we also allowing accessibility to everybody that wants to come in? There are people with various means of mobility and limitations with how they can interact with the physical environment. So we want to make sure that we are taking that into consideration. Some recent changes over the last 10 years or so have been, there are aspects of that as well, include sustainability. And are the buildings that we're building, are we creating buildings that are being conscientious towards the environment? Are we making sure that we're using materials that are not polluting our environment or polluting the environment within? So are we gassing ourselves with off-gassing that is, making people have headaches and get sick? Are we?
Let's just really quickly tell them what off-gassing is. So a lot of plastics will actually throw off gases. I didn't know that. So I don't know if you all knew that, but
Sure. So yeah, a lot of materials and even not just plastics, a lot of materials in general have these, dangerous chemicals that come out. I mean, you may have also heard about like lead in pipes, and you've probably heard of asbestos before. It was an insulating material that was used. And a lot of these type of materials are dangerous to the environment, not only to the environment, like the trees and the plants and the animals and everything like that, but it's also environment that we live in, the environment that we actually are occupying, the space that we're in. So they're dangerous to us. So we have to think about that. And then also, are we using materials that are able to be reused in the future? Are they able to be recycled in the future when that building no longer serves its purpose? And then even more so, is the building designed in a way that if the use of the building changes, can we still use the building? Are the bones of the building still, enough that we can modify what happens inside and still keep the overall building, so that way we don't have to destroy it and build a new building? So there's some sustainability issues. There's also another movement that's going on too that has to do with social equity as well. We're thinking about how are buildings that we're building inviting, how do they end up inviting everybody to feel comfortable within them? Are we building something that is making someone feel oppressed, someone feel neglected or left out? Or are we trying to design buildings that are open to everyone, so that everyone has a cultural stake in it? And a lot of times that is those little things that happen are things that you wouldn't think would necessarily bother some people, but some segments of society take offense to certain types of buildings, for example, like even classical architecture. A lot of people might look at classical architecture and go, wow, classical architecture is fantastic, those giant majestic columns and beautiful facades and everything with great shapes and very geometrical, the whole bit. But and they're classical, they've been around forever, but they also represent Western civilization. Western civilization can sometimes be offensive to some other groups. If you think about like some Eastern cultures, some cultures from Central and South America, there's a number of people don't necessarily feel comfortable in a situation like that. So if you make a federal building that's supposed to be a public open space for everybody to come in, and it looks like that, it may be imposing and scary to some people. So if you can create a building that is welcoming to everyone, that's another form of sort of a social sustainability and a social justice that can be put into designing buildings. So without getting into any more of those kind of specifics, just to give you some more outline of architecture itself, why architecture? Why would we choose to get into so much of that? It sounds like a lot, right? I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of things trying to juggle, but maybe that's exactly the kind of thing you're interested in. Maybe you like the idea that there are so many different things going on in the world. Well, how can I bring them together and create a beautiful whole out of them? And what can I do to help move that forwards, to move that movement forward, so that I'm creating beautiful spaces to make people feel comfortable? And maybe you're not doing all of those things. Maybe you're just focusing on sustainability. Excuse me. Maybe you're just trying to save the environment. That's your big thing. So you focus on that segment of architecture. Or your interest is in social equity, so you focus on that segment of architecture. Or accessibility, and you have an aunt or a grandmother or a father or someone who might be in a wheelchair, has a difficult time getting around, and you want to do what you can to try and change the built environment to make it more comfortable and accessible to that person. There are a myriad of ways as to why people become architects and the things that they focus on. And that's actually one of the fabulous things about architecture, is that there are so many avenues to be involved. And maybe you're more of a mathematical minded person and you might design structure. Maybe you're more of an artistic person and you want to make beautiful flowing landscapes through there, because there's another segment of architecture as well. It's landscape architecture that deals specifically with that kind of a thing, with landscape. So some of the key characteristics of what a person is that studies architecture. I mean, are you a problem solver? Are you self-motivated? Are you interested in adaptability? Are you creatively minded? Are you a leader? Are you interested in helping to organize all of these different parts to get them to happen? Are you really good at, precision? You understand how to make things and you want to make things just right, a little OCD, if you will. You might focus on some super little finite detail and make that just right. And all of those different aspects are needed in architecture. I mean, many people, when I started out as a drafter. So I would draft, meaning that an architect would come up with a grand design, and they would also be coordinating all of the consultants, meaning the other engineers and contractors and everything involved. And they would give me the overall design, and I would help make all those little details work so that it actually could be built in the real world. And that precision was something that I really enjoyed. It was like I was solving puzzles, three-dimensional puzzles on a regular basis, and it was super fun to do. And I still enjoy doing that on occasion.
And I would emphasize adaptability. And I don't even think that you need to, that doesn't have to be an inherent skill, and I think you can practice it. So adaptability being like, how comfortable are you in an uncomfortable situation? Go put yourself out there in a situation that you're not comfortable in and just bear it and just, really feel it, and then try to work on, making the situation something that you can make really great for yourself. Because a lot of architecture is adapting to certain circumstances, like what is a site like? Is there snow here or isn't there snow? I highly recommend checking out a project called Haley 6. It's the British Antarctic Survey project. So just like a little note about engineers and architects, the beauty of an engineer is they get all the calculations and stuff, but the beauty of an architect is that they can look at the whole picture. Haley 6 was a really interesting project because it was the first project where an architect worked on it. There were 5 other projects strictly made by engineers, and all those projects failed. But the architect, being able to look at the whole thing holistically, was able to figure out how to make it so that a structure in Antarctica would actually be able to weather the weather. So for example, one of the biggest things was an engineer thinks, okay, let me make these really efficient. And then they put the toilet next to the beds and then it smells really bad, which happened. And that was horrible. But then the architect obviously separated things because they think about people and also efficiency. They're not just thinking just efficiency, they're thinking about the way that people feel. And then the architect also, another thing that kept happening was that the design that the engineers kept creating, they kept getting, they kept caving in because the snow would stack on there. And so the architect was like, oh, we need to be able to have the snow not collect. So the design was such that not only was it, kind of like teepee formed, but also on the bottom, the snow wouldn't collect because it was on stilts, and you could move it. So it was actually on stilts on skis, and then you could move it from location to location. So that's kind of that's my favorite example of the difference between an engineer and an architect, is that the architect will look at it more holistically. So and they're adaptable. And I guess that's why I'm emphasizing adaptability. And again, you can practice adaptability. You don't have to have it right now. None of these, if you are able to learn how to adapt, then you're able to learn all these other skills. So yeah.
Certainly. And that's something that's a great interest in attending architecture school itself, because yes, they're teaching you about buildings and they're teaching you how buildings go together, but they're also teaching you how to think and how to solve problems. That's the big thing. And that's what architecture really is. Almost every project in architecture is like a grand 3-dimensional puzzle that you've got to try and figure out. And it's more than just three-dimensional, because there's also a lot of inherent social aspects that are involved in it as well. So for example, the aspect of the toilet next to the bed, that's a human thing. That's not a matter of just like looks or anything like that. It's not just a matter of functionality of space, but it is a matter of functionality of people and how we work as humans, and how that component plays into that three-dimensional puzzle. So being able to play with that puzzle concept is something that has been a lot of fun in architecture. So how do you go about becoming an architect, right? Bonnie and I shared kind of our paths and how we've been working along doing that. The bottom line is you need to earn a degree in a NAB accredited university. There are resources available that you can gather information about what is a NAB university. And the biggest thing that I would recommend is to visit NCARB, NCARB. That is the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. That program, or that organization rather, has a great website that has information on what it takes to become an architect, where you can go to school for architecture, the licensure path, and you will need, in the end, you will need to have an account, which I believe it's free to have an account until you've graduated from school, to have an account with NCARB to help you on your way to become an architect, because you also need to use that.
Oh, sorry. NCARB is written at the bottom of the screen, just so you know.
Right. Oh, yes, right down here. Yeah, and National Council of Architectural Registration Boards. So yeah, you definitely want to check that out. That's a great place to learn about that. So you earn a degree at a NAB accredited degree. Then once you have your degree, then you gain experience, and usually it's approximately 3 years-ish worth of experience that you have to learn. It's X number of hours, like 1,000 hours or something like that of work time that you document. And then once you've proven that you've documented all those different aspects of the experience, then you take your exams. I believe now you can actually take those exams concurrently. You can do that at the same time. So that's not an issue. It used to be that like when I became licensed, I had to complete all my experience first, and then I would be able to take the exams, but that's changed. And then once you pass your exams, you have your 3 E's, your education, your experience, and your exams completed. Then you apply to the state board of architects, and you can become licensed. And that's what I did about 3 years ago. I became licensed as an architect in Oregon. If I want to go to another state and become an architect, I have to apply to be an architect in that state. I cannot just practice architecture in another state. I have to actually become licensed in that other state to be able to do so legally. So that's and that gets a little bit more complicated as time goes on. So if you're interested in going the path of studying architecture, it's recommended to look at, well, I would recommend this to anybody that's going to any college for any degree. If you're interested in the subject, find out what that degree program entails. Find out what classes are expected for you to obtain that degree, and then start tailoring your education so that you're preparing yourself to take those classes. You want to be able to be mathematically proficient, although it's not a math heavy field. Architecture is not super math heavy. You want to be, I'm sorry?
I said all you have to do is like trigonometry, and you start getting that in high school.
Exactly, right, yeah. So some trigonometry is the hardest part, I think, more than anything. There's a little bit of science as far as physics that are included. So there's some science that you got to think about. There's a little bit of math involved in the structures portion of it, but again, it's nothing that's basic algebra kind of stuff that you might deal with. You want to think about art. Understanding history is important. Art doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be a Picasso. Well, You don't need to be an amazing artist to do anything in architecture. You just have to understand what it is you're looking at. Art can also mean photography. It can be, using computer-aided design to help you with understanding and drawing new products and new ideas and new concepts. The idea is that you want to train your eye. And that's a really important thing because as we were talking about all these various aspects involved in architecture, the one thing that sort of brings them all together is the vision. You want to be able to take all these seemingly separate objects and concepts and ideas and bring them all together as one. And that's where Photoshop and photography and art and drawing can really help you do that, because it helps you to really notice the small details and how they make a big difference. And it helps you to put that overall picture together.
And then my concluding thoughts are, if I may, because we're wrapping up, by the way. So you all are fairly young, and I just have a recommendation. You should also consider something called space architecture. You should visit spacearchitect.org, and it has a ton of resources on space architecture. So Elon Musk and SpaceX and Blue Origin. Those are companies that are making space the future. There's currently a program called the Artemis program through NASA, and eventually we're going to start needing architects in space, because right now everything is being done by engineers very primitively design-wise, but they're going to need architects very soon. So you should start getting ready for that. So I highly recommend that if you're interested in space. Definitely watch sci-fi and then kind of start thinking about things, looking at things differently. And then last thing also that I wanted to say is architecture, like John was saying, is really good for problem solving. And that is a new problem, and you can go into different fields and also solve problems. So you can go into set design for movies. You can also do what I'm doing, which is more of a volunteer thing. So where you can go study policy. So right now I'm helping in the police commission, and I'm studying policy, which is like studying code for architecture, but keeping people safe in a different kind of way. So it really gives you a wide breadth of ability to really just solve problems in all aspects of society. So you don't actually get limited to just architecture. You can do it a bunch of other things too. So I highly recommend the field.
Yep. Most definitely. I would second that in that architecture doesn't just teach you how to put buildings together, but it teaches you how to solve problems. And those problems are great, and there are tons of problems out there that need to be solved, and they're still continually working to solve them. And if you are interested in joining architecture, architecture can help you learn the tools to solve problems. And those problems can slowly be chipped away at to make the world better. So
join this organization. Also talk about architecture there too.
Mm-hmm. So let's see. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, there are various degrees in architecture. You can get an associate's in architecture from some programs. I don't believe Lane offers that. They do offer a drafting program though. So that's a good start. Bachelor of Art or a Bachelor of Science are two different degrees that are available in architecture. They also have environmental design and architectural engineering available. Various schools have different names for their programs depending on what school you go to. At the University of Oregon, it's just a Bachelor of Architecture. So it's considered an arts degree. And then the master program is the same. It's a Master of Science or a Master of Arts in Architecture as well. One great thing too about architecture is that there's beautiful architecture around the world. If you attend a university, most universities that teach architecture school have study abroad programs. And you can go to another country. You can go to Japan. You can go to Rome, Italy. You could go to Amsterdam's in the Netherlands. You could go to England, India. The options are limitless as to where you could go, depending on the school's programs for their study abroad programs. But by learning architecture and traveling to other places and seeing architecture in other places, it can highly influence what you can bring back to your own community or move forward to in the future with your design. So there are certain requirements that, are certain things that are required to get into the program. And there are a number of questions you want to ask when you are visiting schools. You want to ask, like, what kind of portfolio you're going to need, because applying to a school for architecture, you need to submit a portfolio, and that just shows the type of work that you've done. And that can be as simple as some photographs that you've taken, some drawings that you've done, paintings. They want to see a number of things, but the biggest thing is they want to see that you're able to attempt multiple different types of things and sort of show that adaptability, show that you can make it a solid attempt at something. Does it all have to be perfect? By no means, but they do want to see, oh, do you understand what a building is? Do you understand what sustainability is? Do you understand what some of these things are? If you have a hint of what those things are and you've spent a little bit of time putting those portfolio that shares what you know and who you are and expresses who you are and your creative abilities, you can present that to them as your portfolio, and that's usually enough. Architecture school is about the same cost as any other college degree out there, except you're going to have an extra year of college for that architecture degree. But one big thing that's the biggest difference is the amount of time you're going to spend in studio. And studio is one of the most amazing parts of architecture school. Is you basically you have your own separate desk. You're not sharing it with anybody else. That's your desk for the whole term, and you are designing, and it's your workbench, and you design buildings on that desk. And everybody that's in your studio, there might be another 12 or 14 other people that are in your studio, and all of you become like a little family, and you work together and you spend crazy numbers of hours working on your projects, encouraging each other, making fun of each other, helping each other on projects. It becomes a family, a small family for that term that you're together. And then you move on to another studio and you learn another building type or another problem that you have to try and solve. And you spend each studio trying to solve a problem, a new problem. So it's a different lifestyle than your average student, whereas you're not going to be able to be playing Frisbee out on the quad as much as some of the other students in college, but you'll be spending all your time in studio, which you'll find to be probably more fun than playing Frisbee on the quad. So that's something to think about as well. But I'd highly recommend talking to current architecture students at whatever school you're interested in applying to, and asking them about what the environment's like there. What is the social environment there? What is the focus of their school, and what is it that are they focusing on? Are they focusing on sustainability? Are they focusing on social sustainability? Are they focusing on classical architecture? Are they focusing on space architecture? There's different places for every place.
And a note on classes, just in case you don't actually get the experience that I get, also go with your gut and your instinct. Like, definitely take what people say and digest it and see if it works for you. But sometimes it doesn't. I had this one professor, and you normally don't get the same person to review your project, but I got the same guy twice. And he told me one thing. He told me to move a stair. And then the next time I saw him, I moved it to where he told me to. And he said, well, you should move it over here where I had originally put it. And then he said, he didn't really apologize, but he said, oh, okay, well, I guess you should just put it back. So what I learned is go with your gut. Yeah, and take what people say with a grain of salt. Like, listen, but also, like, you have your reasons why you design the way you're designing. So I've run into that a lot.
And I want to jump in here and just show, so in 30 seconds, this whole thing is just going to stop because it's a Zoom,
Yeah.
a meeting time. So just so you don't have an abrupt end, if you want to just final last words and goodbyes.
Oh, yes. So essentially, if you're an architect, you're kind of a hero in different aspects, just saying, because it's all about safety and people's safety, and you can go solve problems. So that's it. Just if you have like a hero attitude, go do that. So yeah.
Right. And even if you don't, you can also think about the fact that there are lots of key little small parts that need assistance within the architecture community as well. And again, the degree of architecture really sets you up to be able to become a problem solver. So if you're interested in becoming a problem solver or you feel like you are a problem solver, then architecture might be a good path for you. And here I've got some final things that you might want to check out if you're interested. Check out there's a number of AIA K through 12 initiatives that are available through the AIA website. That's the American Institute of Architects. So it's aia.org. Also, if you're interested, if you're graduating and you're planning on going to a college, make sure you look into the NAB accredited universities and know that there are architectural AIA student chapters as well. So check out those resources, and whatever decision that you decide to make, I wish you the best. I hope you do well, and best of luck to you.
All right. Thank you both so much. I'll go ahead and stop the recording here, but just thanks on behalf of Churchill and our students. Thanks so much for taking the time to share this information.
You're welcome.
Sure. Hope it was helpful.